Hey, Third Church. Welcome back to our 5-minute-ish Bible studies. I'm glad that you're able to be back with us. I hope that our opportunity to dive into the Word together is fruitful for you in your own spiritual growth and journey. So God offers God's people the gift of rest in the midst of their struggle. That's the primary point the author of Hebrews is making. We see it historically in the past in the scriptures, and the author of Hebrews is saying to this Christian community, just like God has always made this promise of rest and relief, God makes it to you now as well. And God, and the author of Hebrews does this then by also connecting this idea of rest to this concept of Sabbath. Sabbath, or the experience of God's presence. It is restorative. It is recreative. It is full of hope and of life. But even in that, it does require something from those who would enter into it. Rest, the experience of God's recreative and restorative presence, requires those who enter into it to surrender and to practice surrendering. To surrender to all things except God. To surrender to all things but resting in God. To surrender their trust to all things except trusting in God. So the invitation then to rest is an invitation to be at rest and let go and to let God. So by referencing both the wilderness generation and Sabbath rest as an allusion to Genesis 1, the writer of Hebrews is connecting the struggle of the Christian community to whom he's writing to the historic experience of suffering and struggle that the people of God have always endured. So what the author is saying to this Christian community is essentially, hold on, because you are not alone. You're not alone because you stand in a community with a great line of witnesses, the generation of God followers who have also experienced the same suffering. You have fellowship and community and friendship in that. You're not alone also because God is with you. Just like God was with the people in the wilderness, God is with this struggling Christian community. So there's the promise that the author of Hebrews is reminding the struggling Christian community, the promise that God offers of relief from their current suffering. But again, as we see, and if we read a little bit further here in Hebrews into 4:11, you see that the author of Hebrews says, then let's make every effort to enter that rest so that no one will fall by following the same example of disobedience. So again, this idea of making every effort to enter that rest is a reminder to this Christian community that there is always a choice in front of the follower of God. To choose to follow or not to follow God, to choose to trust God or not. And that is the same kind of choice that is always in front of the follower of Christ, to choose obedience or disobedience to the ways of Jesus. So to the struggling Christian community, the author of Hebrews, their pastor, tells them, remember, there is hope. There is relief, there is deliverance if you trust and surrender and let go and fall into God's arms, trusting God with to provide for you, trusting God to deliver you. What will you choose? Will you enter into that gift of rest that comes with trust? Or will you continue to harden yourself against God's promise of presence and choose to rely on your own strength to provide your own sort of relief or deliverance in the midst of your suffering and struggle? All right, let's stop there. That gives us a little bit to think about until it's time for us to come back together and consider additional texts from the book of Hebrews. Looking forward to being with you next time.